Afternoon, everyone. This is our new meditation webinar, the 5th of May, titled Reflection. We're just starting the broadcast now. We'll get started in earnest in the next few minutes. Here we are. I'm going to post a disclaimer in the comments section here. Please have a look at this to begin with. Now, welcome to Reflection, a new self-healing webinar taking place during, of course, social lockdown. So people are having perhaps a little more time for reflection, experiencing themselves. The external environment's gone quiet to a fairly significant extent. And so it's possible that we may be picking up on and experiencing and understanding mental health issues, emotional health issues a little more than we do when we're busily engaged and distracted by a normal life. That's kind of the point with meditation practice and healing, that we pay less attention to the environment and that we really experience what's happening inside ourselves more. The development and really, to put it a certain way, the purification of the mind, the emotions, the inner aspects of ourselves being the aim, really. Based on an understanding that the healthier we are on the inside, the more pleasant our experience is, and of course the more capable we are of acting efficiently in life. Reflection, the title of the event, refers to the types of practices that we use in meditation, contemplation, these kinds of things. We're going to look at some techniques for self-healing today, which are based on those. But the title also could refer to reviewing what we've been through in recent weeks with these webinars. This is the fourth that we've done over about 4 to 5 weeks or so. So we've had a look at some, we've considered some of the principles of self-healing, contemplative meditation practices, mental healing practices. Use some practices. I recommended some previously. Perhaps you will have had time to use them to a certain extent. It's a very good idea to, there's a lot to these kinds of practices, and the more they're used, the greater the benefits are and the more easily achievable they are. In essence, the benefits are fundamentally that we can improve the quality of the mind. That's what we're working with most immediately with any kind of self-healing practice. We're working at this level, the brain, where the conscious mind or the intellect or the ego or the sense of I, as we explored previously, is centered. The sense of me is based at the head level, and that's really what we think with, and it's what we experience in meditation. It's what we make decisions with regarding any factor or facet of our lives. So it's very important for that part of us to be healthy. The healthier the mind is, the more enjoyable it is to experience, and the easier it is to think, make plans, generate ideas, and begin to get the process of any physical enterprises we want to be involved in underway. And the relationship between the intellect, the mind, and then physical life circumstances, including success in life projects, hopefully, is very significant. There's basically a chain of effects of mental change. Firstly, hopefully the mind grows healthier, but immediately as it does, with no delay at all, the body responds to that mental change, because obviously the two are connected. So the body generates emotions in response to mental activity, and it's reacting to the activity of the mind in exactly the same way as it does react to activity in the physical environment. when events occur around us physically, the mind responds by generating feelings, which are basically its language and its reactions. And that happens with physical events past the skin, but it also happens with mental events inside the body. That there's no absolute difference in that regard. And so we want to be aware of this phenomenon, really, because it helps us begin to understand the alleged mind-body connection, and the significance of why thought and mental activity and the personality affect us physically, and change who we are and affect what sort of state we're in. So thought, and mental change are beneficial in themselves for the mind, but they then affect emotional health as well. So every emotional aspect of our emotional experience is under our control to a certain extent, and we can interact with our emotions and heal them by using these kinds of mental techniques that we'll use today. And then, of course, emotional health affects the body plenty as well. The body's health and state are very much affected by what sort of mood we are in. So there are 3 very significant immediate benefits to meditation practice, which I absolutely have found are realities. I'm sure that if you use these kinds of techniques as well, you'll probably draw the same conclusions, that we can improve our mental health. And as we do this, we improve our emotional health as well, and the body benefits as a result. And of course, the state of the body determines how it behaves in its environment, and how we interact with features of the environment, what sort of approach we take to life experiences. So actually, the level of success we achieve in any physical enterprise is very, very much determined initially from within. We have to set our intentions up adequately, and we have to have a belief in our capacities to perform in any circumstance, to achieve whatever we're working on physically. So there's basically a 4-point chain in terms of our state and our character, and how this affects our health and the outcomes we meet with in life. Mental health, emotions, bodily condition, and then physical behavior, all determined from within, all affected by thought and intention. So these are significant benefits. I've spoken before about how I recovered from supposedly incurable illnesses by using these kinds of techniques. The effect on the physical health of meditation practice is not insignificant at all. I'm one of a number of people who have done pulled off quite significant healings of the body, even when it's not supposed to get well, by using mental techniques, accessing altered states of consciousness, healing the subconscious mind, healing the emotions, and then getting the body to change the way it's behaving. That background of mine is detailed on my website at thehealersnexus.com. You're welcome to take a look at it in detail. But yeah, I mean, for a practice that's essentially free, we just need to have the body well fed enough, basically, so that it's got enough caloric energy so that we can sit and engage the mind and use these kinds of practices. Some pretty significant benefits, We don't need equipment for it. We don't need drugs, etc. necessarily. We just literally have the architecture, infrastructure and capabilities as part of our nature to be able to explore our mind, develop it, heal it, and then enjoy improved health in multidimensional ways, and very likely be able to perform better physically as well in life challenges, life projects, etc. So what we need to do to start to access these kinds of benefits, hopefully achieve this type of change, and it is literal physical change that we're seeking. We're trying to become somebody else by virtue of changing our minds, in essence, is that we need to have a reflexive practice. Basically, we need to be engaged in some kind of contemplative practice, which lets us think things through and lets us start to access the mind's self-healing abilities, or at least just experience them, because they're basically inherent. The mind does want to be well, consciousness wants to heal itself. So we just need time to, we need to grant it time to do so. So I recommend, if you can make 15 to 30 minutes a day, it's a very good idea to try and sit or lie down somewhere fairly peaceful, where you're not going to be distracted by physical activity around you very much, if that's at all possible. If it's not possible every day, fine, fair enough, but at least sometimes what we want is basically a healthy environment to sit in and be able to think in. If we can combine these kinds of spiritual practices, mental practices, with time spent in nature, that's the ideal combination, because the physical, natural environment, generally, if the temperature's right, access to sunshine, fresh air, the kind of weather we're starting to experience now, really, is ideal. If we can combine that sort of access to the natural world, exposure to the natural world, which will heal us for free, sunlight, fresh air, the Earth's electromagnetic field, they're incredibly beneficial for health. With combining them, access to them with reflective practice, changing the mind, making the decision to try and heal ourselves, then we've got a pretty powerful formula immediately, two-step formula for self-healing. And wherever you are, whether you're sort of outside and you do get into nature, or it's a practice at home, etc., we want to sit and we want to lie down. We just want to experience what happens, basically. To very briefly recap this, there's a conservation of vitality or energy which is achieved when we don't interface with the physical environment as much. If we're distracted by the environment, we're standing, we're using the muscles, we're walking around, engaging with it. We are focusing on external events. We just use a lot of our energy to do so. And if we don't do that, and we sit quietly or we lie down quietly, then energy consolidates in the body and the mind, it energizes both of them, and there's more energy available, more vitality available to the body for its self-healing. So what that does is it energizes the mind, and it grants us gradually heightened awareness. Meditation practice makes us more aware. It strengthens the mind. We can often start to experience ourselves in more vivid detail. And so that's the first thing to do. Just sit and experience what happens. I may well have used the analogy before, but it's we can just think about the consciousness really as a body of water through which bubbles are rising, or content is rising, activity is rising and taking place. There's in a physical example, there's a stream of air or moving through water towards the surface, and that's just like what happens with meditation practice. Basically, the surface of the water represents the intellect or the conscious mind, whose contents we're significantly aware of, and then lower down, basically in the body and stored in other parts of us, are memories, ideas, older attitudes, the effects of life experiences, emotions. And when these aren't closed down and stored because we're otherwise engaged and interacting with the environment, but when we sit and we liberate them, then that whole subconscious system starts to open up, and as a result, its content starts to rise into awareness, just like those bubbles moving through water. So, of course, physically speaking, when we look at that kind of event happening, when air rises and it breaks the surface of the water, eventually it pops and disperses. And that's what you'll experience with the waves of activity which happen within thought or emotion, even physical symptoms. It's all cyclical, basically. There's a sort of flow to every event, and if you allow all the bodily processes, mental processes, emotional ones, and physical ones, just to take place without interacting with them, interfering with them, or suppressing them at all, they will rise, quote, to the surface, and they will then form, on the surface, and they will disperse, and they'll clear away. So this gives us an interesting insight into how the mind functions, and we'll go through a physical exercise now to investigate this. But basically, it's the mind is an environment which activity takes place within, and we're not the activity so much, or we're only temporarily the activity. But the environment itself can change, which is to say that attitudes and ideas and content which move through the mind will eventually disperse, like those bubbles dissolving, and then yet we remain in existence. We're left behind. So we are the environment that all this happens within. If we're looking for the truth of who we are, we have to sort of experience this space that we are in, this environment which content occurs within, because the content's basically transient. So this has application for healing. Let's use an example: anxiety, okay, or some sort of undesirable negative emotional state, stress that someone's dealt with. If we spend time relaxing and letting that emotional state and the energy of it occur and play out within us, it will rise and it will eventually reach its apex, basically, and it will then disperse. And we might be able to, and this is true with every single type of activity that happens within us, so we may be able to achieve some degree of insight into this now. If we sit for a few minutes and we use a eyes open type, just basic practice, please just sit or lie down and allow whatever's happening inside you to take place. And we'll see what happens. We'll see if we can go through one or more of these cycles of something surfacing and then clearing. And again, it's largely passive. It's just a matter basically of relaxing somewhat and letting activity occur. So it's almost like watching film playing out in front of you, basically. Just allowing the activity of the mind to take place. And allowing emotions to take place, anything that's happening in terms of feeling in the body. And also allowing the state of the body, the activity of the body to take place, whatever's happening physically. There's a lot underway. It's very interesting to explore the inner environment with the mind and with sensitivity in the same way that we would walk through a physical environment on the outside. There's one option in that regard. We can explore beyond the body, but we can very much explore inside the body as well. And it's a very, very complicated, intelligent, highly capable system which absolutely wants to be well. It's got a dedicated instinct to self-preservation, self-healing. We're giving the body space basically to turn on its self-healing capacities or express them with this kind of practice, because again we're saving our energy and it is available for healing instead. So I can, in the interest of time today, we won't go into that in too much detail, but I can leave the practices with you. Just sit and experience yourself, basically. If I could summarize it, that's the best way to put it. Experience yourself. And, gradually various things will happen. So this collection of personality traits and attitudes that we've established over the course of we've inherited and then established over the course of our lives as well, which make up our character overall, will gradually start to unravel, unpack themselves. We can explore the mind, and content will surface, ideas and thoughts will surface, and old emotional patterns will surface. And then bodily activity will be experienced, and it will be either pleasant or unpleasant. Basically, to be perfectly frank, healing is the study of the dualistic nature of the human mind, which is has both positive and negative aspects. We have a tendency towards generating both. There's a broad spectrum of emotional states, for example, which define us overall. Enthusiasm, happiness, kindness, optimism, vitality, excitement, generosity, etc. Positive qualities like that. And then some people call them the shadow elements, selfishness, fear, aggression, these kinds of traits as well. It's all within us. We've got this range of characteristics that we've developed for different reasons and for using in different situations. It's all legitimate, it's all perfectly true and part of what we are. So try and experience whatever surfaces, basically, and allow it to take place. Just be honest. We spoke about honesty last week, I think, somewhat, the importance of it as a quality. Just being oneself, basically, being honest. And over time, during one practice session, or ideally over a few, if you can manage to get three or four sessions of this done during a week, you're going to experience this cycling of the mind, this dualistic up and down flux between different states, some positive, some negative. And overall what that does, it's a very significant type of internal exercise, basically. It's like physical exercise benefits the muscles and the physical structures to a significant extent. The emotions really get exercised a lot by these kinds of practices when they're given space to express themselves. Lots of different attitudes and ideas that want to express themselves from within. So try and let them all just surface, because you will experience that there is a sort of an ascent into any of them, and then a peak, and then a dispersal. And that's the bubble dispersing, and that's beneficial for various reasons. It just basically clears the mind. This is a basic technique for clearing the mind, allowing its content to unravel and disperse. And then what we can look at in due course, probably next time, is how do we then use the mind? The mind will get healthier if we sit or lie down and we just allow activity to take place. We think things through. We have the reactions that we do to what comes up from within us. We define our ideas about how we feel about things better, etc. We gradually grow healthier. Our attitude gets stronger. Our decisions get clearer. We decide how we feel about things, etc. So the personality and our tastes become better established, which is beneficial. And then we have this clearer, healthier field of consciousness, basically, which hasn't been so necessarily so dedicated to old opinions, for example, or unnecessarily tense. These are very beneficial relaxation practices. So with that freer state of mind and that freer consciousness, what do we want to do with it? What do we want to do with the mind? And that's where things like creativity and imagination and setting intentions come in. Those are big parts of healing, using the intellect more actively. This was quite a passive session today, but I think you'll find it quite interesting to explore the mind and body and see what they generate and what they're storing, because it's all basically a record of what you've been through in life. So certain things need to be released. They will be released by these kinds of practices. And then we can look, I think we will probably from the next session, we're going to look at setting intentions, goal setting, these kinds of things. What do we want to use the intellect for, etc., etc., which is a lot of fun. That's the lot of creative freedom that we have, limitless freedom really, with the mind to use it as we wish. So let's leave that as things stand today. But please consider that there may be quite some depth to these practices, to say the least. It's a very, very intricate system, you know, the intellect, the emotional system in the body, the emotional circuitry, and then all the physical body tissues, body processes. It's a huge environment. It's a very interesting one. It's very enjoyable and fascinating to explore. So, you know, the more time that's put into using these kinds of practices, the more that will become apparent, and we can then, you know, start to build on this from here. But thank you very much for tuning in today. We'll get a record of this session set up. Thank you for being here, and yeah, we'll post a recording of this so it can be reviewed, and then please message KoKoro Collective with ideas. You know, I'm very happy to take questions or requests about what we do with this kind of work. It's limitless. We can work on mental health or physical health, or we can work on relationships, career stuff, you know, society, our relationship to society, ethics. You know, it's all accessible basically. So I look forward to connecting again soon, in due course, probably within 1 to 2 weeks, and we will build from here. Please have a practice in due course if you have time, and let us know how you get on. Do drop us a message. Thanks.